Again, my name is Jeff Woodman. I'm a systems engineer with VIAVI. That just means I'm the old guy that covers all the copper test products, and this one is the one. You got your new units. I was talking to guys earlier. They're moving from sidekicks and I don't know what other kind of meters you've got. This one will do all flavors of DSL. So all the way through the ADSLs to the VDSLs. And if you even heard of GFast, it'll do all of those with different modems in the unit. This is just a screenshot just to tell you or show you, since I'm not there, where the different ports are. It's got a touch screen. You guys can either use your fingers to touch the screens and open up different menus, or you can just simply use the navigation keys down there, and then once you've hovered over something, you can hit OK and it'll open up that particular option. Okay. Something I didn't tell you is at the very bottom, underneath the button key and navigation keys, you've got that little left arrow that takes you back one. You've got a little house in the middle, that's your home key. And then the one on the right looks like a broken ladder. That's a system key. That does some things there, and I'll show you. But remember what that key does, and I'll have you guys that are in this class actually do some of the stuff just as far as pushing buttons today during this session. And then on the right-hand side, you've got a rubber flap that covers the dual Ethernet ports. You've got dual USB ports. You've got RJ45 for doing a wiring test. You've got your ADSL2 and your VDSL. There is a rubber cover where it says ADSL. And if you open that up, you could actually, if you have a separate cable, which may have come with your units, you could plug in there and you can sync, because that is the actual modem portion, okay, of the unit.
Will a regular POTS cord work with that?
Yes, it will. And I'll show you a little. Okay, I'll show you that. But yes, the answer is yes. I know a lot of guys don't like carrying around extra cables and having to plug in to sync. So yes, you can use your tip and ring test leads. That's why it says that up at the top. Copper, DSL, and any other DSL flavor that you're going to have, you can use tip ring, okay? Or you can use the dual for if you've got any bonded. Are you guys doing any bonded services?
We don't do that in Florida.
Okay, good enough. All right, so that's just kind of a general overview of what these ports are, what it looks like, on and on and on, okay? Now, let me get out of here, and what I want to do is share some other stuff with you. I'm going to actually show you, let's see if I can do this. Let me know when you can see the unit. Can everybody see this?
Yes. Yes.
All right. So there's my screen on a unit that works and everything, and it's booted up, and you may or may not have exactly the same options on your screen as I do. Don't worry about it, because I've got one that I mess around with all the time and try out new software, firmware, etc. So if you don't have some of the things on your menu, or if you've got more than I do, don't tell anybody.
Well, how'd you get to that? The broken ladder?
No, you boot it up. Turn it on.
Oh, okay, never mind. I got it.
They were all open. When we turned it on, they were all open.
Okay, now what you want to do, I hate that. You get these things brand new and every one of those guys is opened up, right?
Yes, yes.
All right.
They were-
See these little arrows over here to the right of the options, like copper, you've got an arrow. It's probably, yours is probably pointed straight down, right?
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Go and hit every one of those and close them all down.
That's what he got. He's got one closed up. Okay. Wow. Look at that shit.
Just close them all down.
Wow.
I don't know why they come from the factory like that, but they just do.
Okay.
All right. Can everybody hear me all right, too? I guess I should have asked that. I'm getting a whole bunch of feedback from somebody. Somebody's got to go on and mute on their end.
Top right, top right, top right, top right.
No, somebody's mowing the lawn.
Yeah, that's what it sounds. All right, that's better. Okay, guys. Here's what I want to do. You've got all the different options there. There's something underneath there. All you have to do is go over to that little arrow and hit it, and it'll open up. So there's stuff behind the different menus that you're seeing there. Where I want to go to start is the very bottom where it says system. And I want you to hit that. Now, again, you can just use the arrow keys and move around or whatever and hit the OK, or you can just simply touch that little arrow off to the right from system and it'll open up and you should see something like this. Okay. Now, one of the guys did ask me about if you're out there, you don't need to bring a tablet. If you're sunk up at the customer prem, you can go over and browse the web. Okay.
Wow.
So you can do that. You got to put in where you want to go and everything, but you do have a web browser on here. Here's your network. I'm actually on my home Wi-Fi system, so I'm connected to my laptop via Wi-Fi with my unit. So there's a couple of things I can't demo because if I do with Wi-Fi, it'll cut it off. But you could, well, go ahead.
So you're saying we can connect Wi-Fi too? We don't have to be plugged into the.
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm connected right now to my laptop via Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Okay. I could do it through Ethernet.
Partnership there.
If you look at the bottom there, you've got network off, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, which is what I'm on. And you can add a network, but the answer is yes. And then you've got your address and network and all your connectivity and everything up at the top.
So I guess if we have to put a static,
Okay.
we can do it from this thing too.
Can we
All
put the static IP in from this?
Huh?
Can we put the static IP for a modem if we have to do it on here?
You can go static or DHCP.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'm back here. Here's where I want you guys all to go. Go to system settings. If you highlight it, you get that little purple box around it, and I just hit enter or the OK key. I want you guys to set up your unit so everybody's on the same page. Now, I'm going to go down so you can see everything, but we're on instrument, okay? And then you can keep going down, and then you've got some specific things that you guys can set and customize your unit for you. Okay? But let's go up here to the very top, date and time. Now you'll see my time. I'm in Arizona, so I'm 2 hours behind you guys because we don't go on daylight savings time.
Boy, he's up early.
You guys good?
Just for you guys. All right. So if you have that highlighted, you just hit the OK key and it'll come up and give you the opportunity to set the time with AM and PM. That little thumb wheel there.
It's got the right time in it already. Yeah.
So it's already timed for you? correctly?
Yeah.
All right. The other thing is the date. Okay, so today's the 13th of January, 2021. Now, the reason I want you guys to make sure the date is set correctly is that if you store any test results or any screenshots, it will put the time and date with those. So you want to make sure that your time and date is set correctly. Date format, month, day, year, which we do in the US. If you want a 12 or 24-hour format, you can set that. If you guys are military. Don't worry about your time zone. If daylight savings time is used, you can hit in there and put a check mark in there. Don't worry about your time synchronization at all. My biggest thing is get your date and time set correctly. Okay. Now, the next thing I want you to do is go down to hardware and software revisions. Everybody follow me there? I just kept taking my down arrow, popping it down to hardware and software revisions, and I opened it up. I just hit OK. Now, you'll see on this old unit, I've been doing some stuff with the engineers lately, and I'm on some old firmware here. Your software bundle, it says ONX 580 at the very top, and it says 6.1.25. You guys are probably in 9 or 10. Is
10.
that correct? You're in 10 something.
10.2.24.
Okay, good. Now, here's something, the reason I want you to know where to go to find that, okay, is because if you ever get stuck or one day, you know, your unit's working fine, the next day something goes wrong, if you go all the way to the bottom, where under user, where it says help and you hit OK, there is a toll-free telephone number, 844-468-4284, that will take you to our TAC, our Technical Assistance Center. Now, those guys are there from about 7 in the morning East Coast till 5 or 6 at night. They're in Germantown, Maryland. Their native language is English for the most part. A little bit of Yankee English up there. But they will be able to help you should something go wrong or you think that your meter's broken, it isn't testing correctly, whatever. It's a toll-free call. They don't charge you. But let me get out of here. You want to go, as I said, you want to go to your hardware and software revisions. They're going to want to know who you are, who you work for, and what your firmware version is. And that'll help them to diagnose or work on any issues you think you're having. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So now if you go down here to user, this is stuff you guys can set for your own likeness. You've got a backlight. Okay. If I hit that, what that is your intensity. How bright is that backlight going to be? And all you do is just hit the minus or plus, and you can use your left or right white arrows down there where the buttons are. So wherever it happens to be, and then hit OK and it'll stay there. The next one is your backlight timeout. Now I've got to put mine at never because mine's always plugged in, but you've got options there. You can go couple of seconds all the way to never. I'm going to give you a little hint. The backlight takes a lot of battery. Now, what does this mean? You're selecting how long you want this to be on with any inactivity before it shuts itself off. So you select that, and if you don't use it for a while, you throw it in your truck, it's still on, the backlight will turn itself off for whatever you've set it to. The next one is power off delay. In other words, I'm not using it, threw it in my truck, drive from the cross box, I'm going to the CO. How long do you want it to stay on before it turns itself off? Okay, so you can set that. Okay. So, and you might have something else in there, I don't know. Anything else? Now, all right, under user, then user information. If you've got some stuff in here, my buddy, old buddy, with a work group, StrataSync, Tech ID, user ID, company, if you've got all this stuff that you want to fill out, have at it. Okay. That's so if somebody steals it, you can go down to the local pawn shop and verify that that's your unit, buy it back from them.
Hey, Justin, I'm not 100% sure as far as StrataSync if I know it's I know it's free to a certain point, but was there any conversations with Frontier on using StrataSync? And guys, just so you're aware, StrataSync is you're able to upload and save all your test results in the cloud. So if you guys have a need for that, we can set that up.
Yeah, a great point, Ryan. Frontier does have a StrataSync account. It has been completely dormant for about 3 years now. So that is going to be an initiative with all these ONXs go out to get a national plan on what the tech ID is going to be, what the organization is going to be. So it's not set up really right now, but be on the lookout for, because we're definitely going to get that going.
Okay. So that's just the main takeaway there with StrataSync, guys. If you want to store your test results, again, in the cloud and be able to reference them, that's an option.
And I'll show you guys when we get into some of the tests how you can actually store a screenshot, and you can save those on your unit. You can download them to a USB stick. Remember I showed you you've got a couple of USB ports on the side of the unit. So, or you can just, that's why I said put the date and time in there, get it correct. But I'll show you how to do that. All right. Any questions about the system settings? Okay. I'm going to get out of here. And I'm going to go right back up to copper. We're going to go into copper tests, okay? And if I open that up, you'll see a whole bunch of other stuff behind door number 3. Okay? My multimeter there, you'll see has a purple box around it. If I hit the OK key, since that's where I am, it'll open up various tests. The first one that's going to come up is AC and DC. Why do you think that's the first guy that comes up there when you get into multimeter testing? It should on any outside plant box that you're using. I don't care who makes it. Number one, because AC will kill you. And number 2 is if you've got any DC out there, you're crossed up with other pairs. You've got a wet section that you're looking at. And any of your test results are not going to be valid, or they're not going to be very accurate. Okay. So AC and DC. AC hurt you. DC, you're just messed up. Okay, so those are the first things that you're going to be able to see. Now, if you look at the bottom of that screen, it says snapshot or options or refresh. If I hit refresh, it's just going to rerun the test. Okay. If I go into snapshot, what it will do is give me and camp on the 2-wire test leads that you've selected, which is the first one. It's going to look tip to ring and just see what's there. Then if I use my down arrow, it'll go tip to ground and it will sit there. Now, the thing about it, you've got a minimum and a maximum. So if I'm there, I'm ring to ground. I just moved my arrow down. And if I want to go to DC volts, let me give you an idea of how to use this. If you think you've got a high joint out there or a series resistive fault, you've got a nick in one of your conductors, and let's say this is just on a POTS line, okay? And the customer complains that they get cut off at times, especially in aerial plant. I don't know how much aerial you have compared to buried or underground out there, but aerial plant, this happens a lot. You'll get a defect in one of the conductors and it'll pop open and the dial tone goes away, correct? What you could do is hook this up at an access point, ready access terminal or whatever, and camp on it like I'm doing here. Now, of course, if you had 48 volts on here, it was a working service, you could just take your layup stick, if it's aerial again, obviously, and go poke the cable a little bit. And if it pops open, it will save the results down underneath where it says minimum and maximum. So you don't have to look at the meter. So if it was at 48 and it dropped to 16 because you were poking it, it's not going to show you where the fault is, but at least it'll tell you what span it's in. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, here's something else I want you to do. Go down to the bottom there where it says options. And there's a purple key underneath there. Hit options. I want you to set it, if it isn't already, at 100,000 ohm termination, not 1 meg ohm termination. Everybody got that?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you will see that up here under, or where it says up at the top, DC voltage, standard refresh, 100,000 ohm termination. Why? What am I saying there? Anytime you guys connect anybody's box to a working service out in the field, you change all the characteristics of that cable pair because you're introducing, a whole bunch of guts, all the electronic components inside your One Expert or your Sidekick or your Fluke meter or whatever other meter you're using. You're changing the characteristics. This is basically setting the internal impedance of this particular box. So when you connect it, it looks similar to what you've got out there for a DSL service. Your D-slams are all 100,000 ohm terminated units. If you look at some other units out there, some other the competitors, they're usually set at a 1 meg ohm termination. Well, what does that mean to you? If you're reading DC voltage with 100,000 ohm termination set here, and your buddy comes over with another meter that's set at a meg ohm, you're going to get a different voltage reading. Doesn't mean they're wrong. It's just how the meter reads it because of the setting that we can put on ours and they can't. So you may be in an argument with, cable repair guys, the traditional INR guys. Nah, there was 6 volts of battery. No, there was 24 volts of battery. Don't worry about it. They're both right. It's what the meter is reading, depending on all the components, and you're setting how it looks to a working service or to a cable pair out there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So you got continuous snapshot. If I go off to the right, I go to resistance, the upside down horseshoe, guys, and I happen to be in continuous, so I'm looking at tip and ring. I'm looking at the 2-wire reading. You'll notice that I'm greater than 999. What's the M stand for?
Mega ohm.
How much resistance is there?
None.
Thank you. That's like a cable pair from here to the moon, and a fly lands on one side. Okay. Again, you've got your minimum and maximum. So if this thing swings a little bit, or if you get a short on there, it's gonna keep the minimum, and it'll show you what the maximum was. And I'm just touching my test leads here. Okay. Now, that's across tip and ring. So I just wanted to show you something here. I've got a little bit of wire in my office. I just threw a short on some wire in my office here, guys. If I go to options, I can go down to distance to short, and I can hit that. Okay. And I have a couple of things that I can change. I can change gauge and temperature. Why is it important to know the temperature of the gauge of the conductor you're measuring when it comes to resistances?
Anybody?
Get more of an accurate reading.
Yeah, when it comes to resistance, you need to know approximately what the temperature is, but the thing that's real important to know is what gauge you're dealing with. Okay? In this particular case, I've got about 32 feet, because I measured it, of IW in my office, and it's coming up 33 feet on a dead short. So you'll see a footage there for 22 gauge. And it's got about a 1 ohm dead nuts short on it. Okay. So whenever I'm in resistance, it's telling me the only thing you can control is the temperature in here on a setting and the gauge. You'll see if I move it to 24 gauge, okay, it's going to change the distance on there quite a bit. Okay. So gauge really has a whole lot to do with distance if you want to be accurate to a short. Now, when can we do this and expect accuracy? If you've got a short out there that is 4,000 ohms or less, the old Bellcore Lab said that's pretty dead short. And we'll try and take that value and give you a distance to where that is. If it's anything over 4K, all bets are off. It's just the short's that way, or it's back towards the office. We're just trying to give you some options there, guys. Okay. Now, the other thing we can do, remember I told you there was that little broken ladder symbol? If you look down at your keys, the one to the right of your home key, can you guys hit that? And it should open up something like this. Is everybody there?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, everybody every now and then will say, hey, does this meter have to get calibrated? Yeah, every 3 years it'll go back or whatever, but that's something the managers will take care of. What we can do, how many of you guys have a Craftsman toolbox in your garage, and in that toolbox somewhere, maybe in the top, you've got an analog voltometer that you use to check maybe some of the wiring in your car. You'll check your battery voltage on your truck or whatever. How many of you just take the two, usually it just has 2 test leads, right? And you clip them together, and then you've got a screw or a little knob in the middle, and you zero out resistance. And resistance on an analog meter reads from right to left. Correct? Well, we can do the same thing with this. If you go down to the bottom left, it says compensate resistance. Everybody see that? What does it tell you to do? Short all your test leads together, and then what you want to do is hit the word compensate.
Huh.
Okay, what I'm doing is the same thing you'd be doing on an analog meter. Clipping your leads together and taking the knob and zeroing it out. What that means is that I'm removing the resistance that you would find in your test leads themselves. So everything starts, all the resistance measurement starts right at the test clips. Okay, that's another reason I wanted you to set the time and date, because it timestamps it. It will let you know the last time you did this. Now, this is also a good way to tell whether or not your test leads are any good. If one of them was kind of partially open, this would come up instead of a green check mark. You'd come up with a great big red X, and it would tell you which test lead was faulty. So if you ever out there and you know, these things wear out. They're like tires and wiper blades, right? They're consumables. You're out there doing this for 2 or 3 years and something just doesn't look right. Go back and compensate your resistance and see if you've got a bad test lead. Everybody got that?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I'm out of there. So again, you can go tip to ring to ground, or I can just do snapshot. Once we do the snapshot, whatever it pegs onto, that it doesn't update. Okay. It just takes a snapshot and that's it. Now, one of the things we can throw on here, and this is a little bit like stress on a sidekick. If you go over the bottom, look at the bottom where it says leakage and hit that guy, and I go to continuous, I'm throwing 120 volts of battery on across, in this case, tip and ring. You'll see the little yellow pyramid here with the lightning bolt in it. Now, we're throwing high voltage, but extremely low current onto the cable pair. It's not going to hurt you. I can take and touch these test leads, and if I stick them on my tongue, I'll probably feel it. But I'm throwing 120 volts on there. What's the purpose of this particular feature? You guys ever work on cable pairs that have a, you know, all the techs usually call them a high joint or a series resistive fault? You get a little nick in the insulation on one side or the other, either tip or ring, and then moisture gets in there, and over time it builds up that green junk around it, and it makes the fault very difficult to see, but it's there. Okay, what this 120 volts does is break that green insulation down. It breaks it away and makes this visible to the meter. You may have to let it sit for a while, but you'll actually see this value in here start to change. Okay. Again, we are current limited. The reason being, if we had higher current, it has a tendency to seal that fault up and make it more difficult for the meter to see. This is also something we can throw on a TDR shot, guys. Okay. Did everybody get that? So leakage is pretty important here. All right. Next one over is opens. Now I'm in continuous. I'll just do snapshot here for the heck of it. Okay. Now this one doesn't do it, I know, but if you were to get like I do, I've got 1 foot across tip to ground and 1 foot against ring to ground. Okay. And my micro or picofarads here. Don't worry about that. If you get that, guess what? Go down to your little broken ladder, your system key at the bottom, hit that guy, and you can calibrate or compensate your opens test. Okay. In this case, though, unlike resistance, it says open all your test leads. So don't let them touch one another. Then you can hit them and it will compensate it and timestamp it. Again, this is a good verification as to whether or not you can use this with the resistance. See if you've got bad test leads or a single bad test lead. That makes sense, guys? All right. So we can do that. Now, when it comes to opens, gauge and temperature have absolutely no bearing whatsoever on your opens test. When I say that, what that means is that if you had 1,000 feet of 26 gauge cable and 1,000 feet of 19 gauge cable, which there isn't a lot of around there, maybe you guys have some out there, I don't know. But I'm saying if you had a reel of it, brand spanking new cable, and you laid 1,000 feet out on the out in the back lot somewhere, and you put anybody's digital open meter on the 26 gauge on pair 1, blue white, and you measured it, which one's going to read longer, the 19 or the 26?
Well,
Any takers?
they're going to read the same.
Thank you. Why? That's exactly right. Because an opens meter doesn't, it measures capacitance, has nothing to do with gauge or temperature. Okay. So if you know that you've pulled out 1,000 feet, anybody's, and I mean anybody's digital open meter better tell you that you've got close to 1,000 feet of conductor there, right? Now the 26 might read a little 1 or 2 feet longer because it's skinnier, it's got more twists in it, but it should be very, very close. Now, how does it do that? It has everything to do with the quality and the uniformity of the insulation around the conductors, guys. And this is a free 101, Telco 101 lesson right here. New cable has anything 25 pair and over, they put on a very uniform thickness of insulation, whether it was the old paper pulp or now we've got PIC, the plastic. That insulation is put on there at the factory at an extremely accurate thickness. So every cable gauge reads the same, and it has to do with how much insulation there is around the actual copper conductor. So a 26 gauge has a little tiny bit, it's not very thick, of plastic insulation. 19 gauge has a gob of it, so that they all read capacitively the same. Now, what does that tell you? If you're working out in the field, how's your outside plant? Do you have a lot of good cable out there? Well, I'm down here in Arizona, and let me tell you what I see when I go out with the techs around here. Let's say we're in buried plant, we go out to a pedestal, and we take the lid off the pedestal. That stuff has dried out so badly that you just barely get in there and start looking for your pair, and you touch those conductors, and all the insulation is cracked at about every 3/8, every half an inch, and it starts falling off the conductors. It's just dried out. Okay. When that insulation starts drying out or breaking off, or it's been out there for 40, 50, 80, 100 years, all bets are off when it comes to making an accurate opens measurement, because everything is dependent upon the uniformity of the thickness of that insulation, guys. So the older it is, the crappier it is, the less accurate the opens test will be. Okay. It'll give you a ballpark. Hey, if you go out there and you cut it and you look towards the field and yeah, I see an open there, or one side open, that's fine. But don't expect to go out there and it says 842 feet away and you're going to go out there and dig on something like that. You'll be digging a trench instead of a splice pit. Okay, what's another great open meter that we have though? You guys all familiar with TDRs? Do you use them?
Yeah. I was going to say what he said about TS100.
Okay, well, there you go. You've got, and that's a good open, I mean, shoot, TDR. I used to have a Biddle and then I moved to a riser bond when I was in the field. Standalone TDR, they're great. They have a big screen. I'll show you the one on this one in a second. But anyway, use your TDR because it does not care about thickness of the insulation around the conductors. It uses frequency, high frequency, to determine length or distance, guys. Okay, enough of that for opens. All right, the next one over is milliamp loop current. Do you guys use, or do you measure loop current on any of your working services out there? I know a lot of guys don't, so I do not spend a lot of time on this particular measurement.
Oh.
In the old days, you should have had about a 23 milliamps on a working POTS line. So I'm not going to cover this or take a lot of time to do it. Just know that we will measure it if that's what you want to do. So I'm going to go over to the next one, which is longitudinal balance. Okay. But I've got greater than 100 dB. You will see down below here, I can measure power, influence, noise, and balance. So I'm going to go to that one. And let's see what we come up with. I don't have any power exposure, so it's not going to run anything. It's too low to calculate. Do you guys have any aerial plant out there where you go for miles and miles in parallel, or your joint pole with the power company? If I say power influence, do you know what I'm talking about? AC induction.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. What happens is anytime you've got if we're on a joint pole, you've got the primary, secondary power, and underneath that, at a certain distance below, you've got probably cable TV, and then you've got the phone cable, right? Well, anytime, what the rule says is anytime you're out there with a power exposure, the power grid has a magnetic field around it, an electronic magnetic field. Okay, it's just how it works. Whenever you put a conductor close to that magnetic field, you can get a current to flow on anything that's metallic around it. Okay, as long as you introduce relative motion, and the relative motion comes from AC, the power grid. So it's going, it's 60 hertz. It goes one way and then it flips and goes the other way, flips and goes the other way, 60 times a second. That's the relative motion. That's what causes that magnetic field to get and to start to flow on all the metal that's out there. So obviously our cable pairs will be influenced by that magnetic field. Okay. What the magnetic field can do to our stuff is if we have any imperfections on our plant, it can turn those imperfections into noise. Okay. So we're looking for a balance value here. You'll see that power influence and noise is what everybody who has an old phone line, an old POTS line, they used to complain about. They'd say, hey, I can hear crackling, I can hear this or a hum on my line. That's from that AC induction. Okay. Power influence is how much of that stuff is getting on. Noise is what people hear and complain about. Balance is nothing more than a calculation. You subtract the noise value from your power influence. Balance should be 60 dB or greater. Okay. Now, when I say that, balance is actually a value of how good your conductors are, your tip and ring leads with reference to ground. In other words, it gives it the ability to reject some of the weird harmonics that come off that magnetic field from the power lead. Okay. Everybody says, most telephone companies say they don't want any more than 80 dBRNC of power influence. They want noise to be 20 or less, balance of 60. So if I see a balance of 60 or 65 or 70, I know I've got tip and ring are in pretty good shape. Can I still have a bad service or a noisy service out there? You bet I can. If I've got a power influence of 100 and a noise of 70, or I'm sorry, a noise of, let's say 30, I've got a 70 balance. So there's nothing wrong with my cable pair. I need somebody out there that's going to go talk to somebody at the power company because they've got a broken insulator. They've got, broken capacitor bank or one that's defective or something. That's another class for another day, noise mitigation. Okay, but there's a lot you can find out just by looking at some of these numbers. If you've got a balance out there and you've still got a noise problem, there's nothing wrong with tip and ring. Your job's pretty much over.
No extra charge for the noise.
That's right. Yeah, we used to condition the guys. When I started out, I was in Nevada. We just tell them, hey, some old farmer that was 40 miles out away from the CO, hey, that's just what you get when you live out here. And then when somebody would move out there by them, they used to just, oh yeah, well, that's just the way it is out here. We'd condition our customers to tell the other new customers that's just the way it was. And then they sent me to noise mitigation school, and it's like, oh boy. All right. So anyway, if we do not have a power exposure, I can go to longitudinal balance here. What does that mean? We create an AC inductive field right out of the meter. Okay. What we do is we actually generate 1,004 hertz tone, and we split it exactly down the middle and send half down the tip and half down the ring. But you have to have a good ground for this to work accurately. So just connect to, a little bit better than, I don't know what it's like where you guys work. Is it really sandy? You can't get a good ground? I don't know. You guys know. But what this does, it will tell you immediately what your longitudinal balance is. It'll give you a real quick, good or bad as far as, is it greater than 60 dB? Okay. This is probably the best test in the box as far as being able to tell you the quality, the overall quality of your cable pair. Okay. That makes sense? So you don't need a power exposure. You can just go to longitudinal balance and it makes everything look on the pair that you're testing, look like it's got a high power influence out there. And how well does it reject it? So it should be 60 or greater, and you're in good shape. And again, guys, once this COVID goes away and I can travel, I'd be glad to come back there and spend time specifically on DSL and get in-depth to DSL or get in-depth to noise mitigation stuff.
Is that your way? Try to get a vacation to Florida?
I'm in Arizona, man. I'm real close to the beach in California. I just don't like California.
Exactly. Who does?
Yeah, Florida is always nice, except in the summer when it's hot and humid. We have a dry heat here. You've probably heard that.
My brother lives in San Diego. I love San Diego.
Yeah, I met my wife in San Diego when I got out of the Navy. Anyway, another story. All right. We're just going to continue on here because I do want to answer some questions about DSL real quick. But the next one is a load coil counter. It will count up to 5 loads, and all we're doing is sending different tones out there, just like a little progressive electronic tone generator that would sit there, and every time it hit a load, the needle would move. Well, we don't have a needle, but we'll actually show you a graph and count up to 5. Okay. So we'll just show you. And you guys all know, have you removed all your loads for your DSL services? Kinda.
Well, you just got certain pairs that are, if it's got a load coil on it, you just move to another pair.
Yeah, there you go. And why is that? Do you guys know what load coils do?
I know. Well, it's for the people out in the boonies. The farmer out 40 miles.
Yep. Anytime we were going to put a service out beyond 18,000 feet, we had to back up and load. Okay. Loads are just lumped inductance, guys. They're just big fat inductors that you stick out there that offset the negative effects of what our cable pair does, which by definition is a long, skinny, leaky capacitor. It's the electrical opposite of a capacitor. So it allows you to keep, those voice tones going out beyond 18,000 feet. Now they're usually spaced around H88s are 6,000 feet plus or minus 2%. Okay. You ever notice that some of the loads are in the most god-awful places in the world to get to? Because spacing is critical. Okay. But when it comes to high frequency signals or a high-speed internet, let's say, loads look more and more like a choke the higher up you go in frequency. These are made for voice or narrow band frequencies. So the reason we have to remove them is because DSL operates, it starts at 25K. Voice is down 300 to about 7,000 hertz, way low. So our high frequency, this thing looks like you're trying to run from one office to another, and there's a door, and the door's shut, and you run into the door. That's what a load does to high frequency signals. It just chops them off. That's why a TDR doesn't see past load coils either. It's high frequency, it sees a load, and it just squashes it. Okay. All right. So let me show you something else you can do. If I'm going to use, let's say, the opens test all the time, I can actually put my finger on it. You see how it makes it bigger? And I can drag it down to the shortcut bar. Or I can do longitudinal balance. Same thing. Okay. I can do this and draw that guy. Well, it's not letting me do it. But I can touch it, or any of these other tests that I've got there, and basically draw them down if you wanted to try that, so that when I actually I've got my copper tests all shut down, those tests will be visible down in my shortcut bar, and I can put up to 4 of them down there. If I use them all the time, it goes right to it. I don't have to open my copper tests up. So if you've got some that you use all the time, just drag them down to the shortcut bar. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't want it there anymore, just click on it and drag it back up and it goes away, or it should. There we go. Okay.
This fucking charger working.
All right. I want to move down. Can we move down real quick to the TDR? We're running out of time quick here. We got kind of a funny start going on today, but I wanted to show you guys are probably going to have more features on your TDR than I do with my older meter here. But I want to explain something to you. If you go up to the top, does everybody up here on quick range, do you see this purple, this hard purple box around quick range here? That means that that's active. So if I use my right arrows, I can take it out and expand the distance that I'm looking at on my trace. If I want to go down to my trace line, I have to either hit inside the trace or hit my down arrow. Now do you see the purple box around where my trace is? Do you see that? That means that I can actually run my cursor out to a distance. Okay. Now, if I were to see something out there, I can actually hit the mark. Okay. And it turns, I'm 142 feet away from where I've connected my tip and ring leads. I just hit the mark and it puts a delta. And then when I continue on, I'm 231 feet away from where I'm connected. And the distance or the delta between this mark that I put there and where my cursor is 89 feet. Why would I use that? Well, if you've got a bridge tap, if you want to know how long your bridge tap is, you could use that. Okay, and then I can take it away just by hitting the OK key. So I can put it on or take it off. Okay. Then I can go down to zoom and pan. That's just like your cell phone. Okay. Kind of fatter, skinnier, whatever. And then I've got gain. Stay away from this guy. Your gain may be in a different location than mine. Gain, you can make anything look like there's trouble on it. Okay. Use gain sparingly. Now, how many of you guys are good at or use a TDR a lot?
I haven't seen one since military.
Okay. They have good ones there. Now, I don't have as many features on this box as you guys do. You have a whole bunch of them. What I've got is standard TDR. You've got in-home TDR, which is short range. Okay. You've got smart gain TDR. And you've got one check. One check actually it's like an auto TDR that's on autopilot. Okay. It'll just, and you have to start it. If you look at the bottom right, there's a start and stop button, and it will tell you what it thinks that it sees. Your TDR is working, sending those pulses anytime you get this little red, or I'm sorry, I'm colorblind, green blip up there. This is going to tell you what it thinks it sees. Okay. Now there's something else you can do. If you like a bigger screen, you can go into options and you can hit landscape, and it doesn't do it on my screen, but it will turn the screen on its side. Does everybody see that? And then the way to get it off is just go back and hit it again. And it flips it around. Okay. The other thing you can do, I'll go into this for standard TDR. And I can go into options and I can hit stress. And it won't stay very long, but it'll throw that 120 volts out there. So if you've got a high open, what you'll actually see, and then you saw that the stress went away, and then it's taken a look at it again. If there was something where you had a high joint out here at 175 feet, you would actually start to see something like a little peak or a little dip. Okay. At that location. Then you could run your cursor out to that location, and that's where that fault would be. But by hitting, again, going on and off with stress, you'll be able to see it start to pop open with that 120 volts on it. It'll stay on for a while, about 20 seconds, and then it goes off. And then it turns the TDR on again, and you'll be able to see it start to bip up. It'll go up or down, depends on what kind of a fault it is. So that's kind of a useful feature on TDR. Okay. Now, do you guys have questions on anything so far? We've gone through a lot of this stuff really, really fast. What I am going to tell you, I'm going to get this thing set up for DSL, if that's okay with you guys, to just I've got a little modem that I can actually sync up to. And I'll do that just to show you some stuff about DSL. This is not in any way, shape, or form a full-blown DSL class, but I can show you some stuff real quick because we did get questions at the first part of this. So I'm going to go to DSL here, and I'm going to connect to my modem that I have here in the office, and I'm going to sync up, hopefully. So is that okay with you guys? Can I do this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna show you. Now, I do have a DSL modem in my office, and most of the time this works, so cross your fingers. I'm gonna sync up, and it may take a minute to do it. Now, somebody asked, okay, how do you use your tip and ring leads versus your other cable in the side? Do you see where it says tip and ring up here, top right? That means I'm using the test leads that I use every day. Now, you guys can do it, but if I do it, it'll kick me off. You guys can just touch those and it'll go to an RJ45 symbol. Does that make sense? Does everybody see how to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What I'm doing is, let's see, I got to get this going. Okay. Launching my modem here. I only did half the work. So my little modem is configuring here. It's a lot slower than it probably would be in the field, guys. So again, this is magic demo time. All right. Now it's starting to ping. All right, here we go. It's starting to, it sees it now. And so we're going through the handshake period. Now it's trying to train. It'll probably drop and go right back into it, but I'll get sunk up here in another 20 seconds or so. Okay. So it's giving me my training. Oh, it did. Sunk up real quick. I can't believe it. All right. So you see the green show time up here, which means we are actually connected. Now, there's a couple of bits of information I want to share with you. You'll see a picture of your ONX. Okay. You'll see a distance less than 1,000 feet here. That is information sent from your DSLAM. Now, of course, it's less than 1,000 feet. It's about 12 feet away from where I am. Okay. How much training time did it take? This is asynchronous transfer mode, and I'm connected to an ADSL 2+ modem. Okay, that's all I've got here in my office. So this represents the DSLAM. This obviously is your one expert. Okay. I'm in my summary screen. I can see my actual rate, 1.3 meg upstream, 27.2 meg downstream. Okay. My max rate, do you guys, it's going to be the same because everything's so close here. Okay. In the field, you guys are going to get actual and you're going to get max. Do you know the difference?
Well, it's what the customer's getting. I mean, because like they're paying for 3 meg, but you can get a max up of like 9 meg.
That's exactly right. It's what max rate is what your line will support for the distance you are away and everything else. Correctamundo. What about capacity? Mine's at 100%.
That's not good.
Why?
because you want it the less percentage it's using is better, because capacity is you probably won't stay in sync at 100%.
Yep. And you know what? Here's what, it's kind of dumb because I go to these meetings every now and with these D-SLAM manufacturers. And you know what they say? Well, if there's no faults on the cable, we'll support 100% capacity. And I go, yeah, right. When's the last time you were in the field? But what that means, guys, is if you were walking towards the edge of a cliff and your toes were hanging over the cliff, somebody comes along and just gives you a slight bump and you fall off that cliff. That's pretty much what that means, just like that gentleman just explained. The higher the percentage of capacity you have, it doesn't take a lot of something to go wrong for that thing to go through resyncs and everything else. So good answer. How about margin? Is that good? My 6.5 or 6.4, 6.9?
That's your noise margin?
Yeah.
That's not good. Yeah.
Horrible, huh?
Eight's the lowest you're supposed to be, right?
Yeah, I like it in double digits, guys.
Yeah, of course.
All right. And then signal attenuation and line attenuation. Don't worry too much about that anymore. The modems are getting smarter and better. So the other thing that you're seeing there under line attenuation is a CRC and an FEC. What are those?
Do not know.
CRC is a cyclic redundancy check. It's a $5 word for it's screwed up. What it means is that it sent a packet and that packet didn't make it. Okay, you lost an entire packet of data. So most companies say that they don't want to have even one CRC out there. If you start to get CRCs and they start running up, you've got issues on that particular pair that you're trying to install on that service. Right below it, an FEC is a forward error correction. That's a function of the modems. They see something that got damaged, a bad packet, they take it back, they fix it, and then they resend it. That's what modems do. That's one of the capabilities. That's a good thing. The bad thing is that it takes time to do that, even though it's milliseconds. If you start to see a bunch of FECs out there, after a while, if they're running wild, you're going 10, 50, 200, 300. Those things can trip up and turn into a CRC. Okay. Now, if I want to look at all the errors, I just see up here, we're at summary. If I go over to errors, there's all the different errors we can look at. Don't worry too much about that. Just this page is the most important. Now there's something else I wanted to show you guys that's real important, and it's at the bottom here where it says, see, we're at connection details right now. Go over to DSL graphs. Now, not that you guys are sunk up, but I am. Okay, if you look up here at the top, I can look at bits per tone and quiet line noise at the same time. So if I wanted to look at quiet line noise down here, I can look for any spikes in here. I always want my bits per tone to be higher than my quiet line noise. So we're using this to troubleshoot what might be going on out there. Now, this is, if you look up at the top right, it says that I sunk on an ADSL 2+ modem. Okay. ADSL2 Plus starts at 25K way down here and goes to 2.2 megahertz. Okay. This little guy, this little mountain, and I'm going to do some stuff here and really tick it off. Let me do this. Move this out. This guy right here is my upstream bandwidth. This little blue guy. This area in between is called guard band. It keeps these frequencies from leaking over here and vice versa. So I've got guard band. It actually goes all the way down. Upstream, downstream. I'm on ADSL. What does ADSL stand for? Not asynchronous. Asymmetrical. Okay. Asymmetrical means uneven. Does my upstream as far as bandwidth look a little bit non-symmetrical to my downstream? I got more of these guys on the downstream than I do my upstream. Why is that? Because how much bandwidth does it take to type in www.youtube.com and then hit enter? That would be upstream. I'm sending a request up to some server farm somewhere in the world that YouTube has and asking for permission to connect, right? So I type in their URL. Conversely, once I'm there, I'm getting on one of their sites on, you know, the latest and greatest 6.5 Cremador reloading information guide, or how to build a bomb, or whatever I'm doing. I just want to see if you guys are listening.
I am.
Okay. And so I need a whole bunch of bandwidth because I'm going to download some site with streaming video, correct? So I need a whole bunch of this bandwidth so I don't get that little guy that starts doing a little spinning in the middle, which means that I'm buffering because something ain't working right. Okay. Now, because I'm only 12 feet away from my modem, this is going all the way straight up here at the top. What this should look like in the field is it'll go over and it'll step down. It'll go over and step down with distance. What is happening is I'm losing that energy over the length of my service. The thing you're looking for is great big notches, a big V up here where I'm missing some of this blue stuff. And then I could move my cursor over and say, I've got something happening here at 772,000 hertz. Well, I've got a T1 out there. So this is for another day, but I just wanted to show you that you need to look at this graph a lot, and you can use the different capabilities in here, signal to noise ratio, bits per tone there, quiet line noise, or I can go up here and do the same thing with trace one, okay? Take a look at your graph, okay? Use this thing. And then again, when this COVID goes away, you guys will be pretty well versed with this machine. I'll come back and we'll do an in-depth training class on the TDR or DSL. Or we can just schedule it down the road. Once you've got questions and everything, that's usually the best way to do it. I don't mind doing this a little bit more in depth once once you guys get familiar with your units. All right, we're at the time limit. Does anybody have any questions for me real quick?
Need to get out in the field and use it.
Yeah, you do. So again, I just went over to tests and settings. Now, once you're sunk up on a modem out in somebody asked me a question. Well, we're using a tablet or a laptop to go out there and prove to them that this works. Well, you can go out there and you can browse, you can use the web browser. You'll see that I'm on modem settings right now. So if I hit OK, there's my DSL interface is tip to ring. This is the modem I've got. I can go into ATM settings. So I can put all the stuff in here that you guys are going to need. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do to emulate or show the customer what's going on here. Okay. So anyway, you know, I've got tests and settings, and there's just so much information in here that you can use. And you can go to your web browser right here. If I was actually sunk up to a real modem and put some, you know, a web page in there and sync up. Or you can do a speed check with them. Okay. I can't do it because I'm connected to my network is down because I'm on Wi-Fi and I'm connected to my laptop. So I can only have one connection at a time here.
I'm surprised you're staying in sync at 100% capacity.
It's only 12 feet away. It actually kicked me out. All right. Is everybody okay with this? I did go over. I just dropped sync there, but I did go over the time a little bit, but I appreciate your attention and your comments today, guys. If you have more